crowd gathers, the influence grows, the platform expands, and slowly, subtly, almost imperceptibly, leadership success becomes measured by how many follow you, rather than how many leaders you develop, by how large your audience grows, rather than how effectively your impact multiplies through others you've built. This shift transforms leadership from multiplication to mere accumulation, from development to dependency, from creating future leaders to cultivating permanent followers. It's the difference between building an audience that needs your continued presence and building men who extend your impact far beyond your personal reach. Scripture presents clear leadership priority, and the things you have heard me say in the presence of many witnesses entrust to reliable people who will also be qualified to teach others. Paul's focus wasn't building his personal following, but developing leaders who would develop other leaders, creating multiplication that eventually reached billions without requiring his continued presence. Jesus modeled this same priority. He could have continuously expanded his audience indefinitely. Instead, he invested deeply in 12 ordinary men with extraordinary potential, not building followers dependent on his physical presence, but developing leaders who would multiply his impact globally long after his physical departure. So how do you shift from follower collection to leader development? First, recognize the ego trap of follower accumulation honestly. There's immediate gratification in growing personal influence, the validation of increasing numbers, expanding platform, and direct impact. Leadership multiplication requires sacrificing this immediate reward for delayed but greater outcomes, relinquishing personal spotlight to develop others who eventually create impact far exceeding your direct capacity. Second, identify leadership potential deliberately. Jesus didn't randomly select his disciples. He intentionally chose specific men with multiplication potential. Not necessarily the most naturally gifted, educated, or initially capable, but those with developmental capacity that, when invested in properly, would yield exponential returns through their future leadership multiplication. Third, provide both support and stretch proportionally. Barnabas first supported Paul when others doubted him, then stretched him through ministry partnership. This balance creates developmental momentum, not overwhelming emerging leaders with challenges beyond capacity, but neither allowing them to stagnate through unchallenged comfort. Effective multiplication requires calibrating support and stretch to current developmental stage. Finally, measure success by succession, not just accomplishment. Moses' leadership culminated not just in wilderness guidance, but in Joshua's preparation. Elijah's ministry peaked not in personal achievement, but in Elisha's development. Paul's impact reached fullness not through personal ministry, but through Timothy, Titus, and countless others he invested in. Your leadership legacy extends only as far as those you've developed to carry it forward. Remember, the true test of leadership isn't how many follow you, but how many can lead without you. Not what happens while you're present, but what continues when you're absent. Not how large your personal platform grows, but how effectively your impact multiplies through others you've built. The world doesn't need more leader-centric organizations that collapse when founders depart. It doesn't need more personality-driven ministries that die with their originators. It needs multiplication-focused leaders who understand that their primary calling isn't to gather followers, but to develop leaders. Not to build personal platforms, but to create succession pipelines that extend impact far beyond individual capacity or lifespan. Your leadership significance won't be measured by how many people you personally influenced, but by how many leaders you intentionally developed who continued multiplying your impact long after your direct involvement ended. not by how irreplaceable you made yourself, but by how effectively you replaced yourself with those who could then do the same for others. Build men, not just followers. Develop leaders, not just audiences. Focus on multiplication, not mere accumulation. Because a leader who develops other leaders creates impact that continues expanding exponentially long after their personal leadership concludes.